If you're hearing this, just know, the night has a way of revealing what daylight hides. And there are truths sold, silent, patient truths that have watched us since before the first human dream. Tonight, stay with me, because once you learn who really controls our planet, sleep will never feel the same again. Tonight, as you settle your breathing and let the world soften around the edges, I want to take you somewhere few people ever dare to go, not into the stars, but into the quiet spaces between them, into the rooms of history that were sealed long before any government began stamping papers with the word classified. There is a story woven into the human species, a shadow thread that stretches across centuries, connecting strange visitors, luminous crafts, unexplainable encounters, and secrets whispered by people who never wanted the spotlight. And when you trace that thread carefully enough, patiently enough, it begins to reveal something unsettling, that humanity is not alone, and perhaps never has been. Tonight you will meet 6 alien species, not fictional, not imagined, but the ones that appear again and again, like a chorus behind the curtain of our world. 6 beings that, if the testimonies are to be believed, do not simply visit Earth, they influence it, guide it, shape it, maybe even claim parts of it. But we won't rush. We will move slowly, the way truth usually travels quietly, and only for those willing to hear. Let your eyes grow heavy. Let your mind loosen its grip on the noise of the day. Because where we're going, the human sense of time doesn't matter. What matters is attention, awareness, and a willingness to look at the dark and say, I'm not afraid. It always begins with the greys, even people who don't believe. In aliens know them, the smooth grey skin, the oversized black eyes that hold no emotion, and the tiny frail bodies that somehow seem stronger than they look. Their image has seeped into our culture like ink spreading across water. But the strange thing is, this picture didn't come from movies. It came from people, ordinary people, who described the same beings long before Hollywood ever imagined them. It was 1961 when Betty and Barney Hill, a couple driving through the quiet back roads of New Hampshire, reported the encounter that changed everything. A glowing craft, missing time, dreams that were too detailed to be dreams, and being silent, vigilant, standing over them with surgical calmness. When they described the creatures under hypnosis, they didn't know they were shaping the face of modern UFO lore, but they were merely the latest chapter in a much older story. Long before that night, long before America was founded, long before Columbus ever touched these shores, ancient cultures drew figures that resembled the greys. Large-eyed watchers, the silent doctors of the sky. Some say the greys are cold, emotionless scientists. Some believe they're caretakers of a failing species, performing genetic work to ensure their survival. And others whisper that they are not individuals at all, but living instruments, controlled by a hive-like intelligence. Whether they come from Zeta Reticuli, as some abductees insist, or from somewhere far stranger, one thing remains consistent. The greys are observers. They never rush. They never explain. They appear where they want, when they want, how they want. And they leave behind the same unsettling sensation that humans are being studied like fragile, unpredictable specimens. But what makes the greys even more unnerving is that they rarely work alone. If the greys are the scientists, then the Nordics are the diplomats. Picture this: tall, radiant beings with long blonde hair, pale skin that almost glows, and eyes so blue they look like polished ice. If the greys unsettle people, the Nordics do the opposite. They soothe. Their presence has been described as peaceful, even comforting. Some who claim to have met them say it felt like standing in the presence of an older sibling, calm, protective, deeply concerned. Their first whispers in modern times began with the 1950s. Contacts saw ordinary Americans who claimed these beings appeared in desert roads, lonely fields, and quiet cabins, delivering warnings. Warnings about nuclear war, about humanity's self-destructive nature, about the need to grow spiritually before we destroy not just ourselves, but something precious in the cosmic order. Some believe the Nordics come from the Pleiades star cluster. Others suggest they are future humans-evolved versions of us, traveling back to ensure we don't collapse before reaching the timeline they come from. And a few darker theories hint that the Nordics oversee the Greys, serving as commanders in a complex, multi-species hierarchy. But among all the stories, one thing is consistent. They speak telepathically. They avoid violence, and they approach with a sense of urgency, as if time is running out. But for every species that comes with calm intentions, there is another that brings the opposite. And this is where the shadows grow darker. The reptilians, tall, muscular, covered in scales that shimmer like polished stone, eyes with narrow, slit-like pupils that stare with ancient intelligence. If the Nordics represent hope, the reptilians represent fear. Not imagined fear, instinctual fear, the kind humans feel when they hear a snake rustle in tall grass. These stories didn't begin in the 20th century. They go back thousands of years. Serpent gods, dragon deities, reptile-like rulers hidden behind human faces. Cultures separated by oceans, mountains, and millennia all described similar beings. Why? Some researchers connect them to Alpha Draconis. Others believe they originated underground, in vast cavern systems untouched by sunlight. And some say they live among us, shape-shifting into positions of power. Politicians, celebrities, generals. If the stories are true, the reptilians don't want peace. They want control. They want obedience. They see humanity not as potential allies, but as resources. It's an unsettling thought that a species could infiltrate a world so deeply that people barely notice them. But the universe rarely cares for what makes humans feel safe. And just when you think this cosmic picture can't become stranger, another species steps quietly onto the stage, the Insectoids. These beings, tall and thin like mantises, with elongated limbs and enormous compound eyes, are perhaps the least human of all. There is nothing familiar in their expressions, nothing warm or relatable. They don't smile, they don't frown, they simply observe and command. Many abductees claim that, while the Greys may perform the physical tasks, the Insectoids are the ones giving orders. They communicate telepathically, but not in gentle words, more like waves of thoughts, precise and unwavering. Some say their intelligence feels overwhelming, like standing beneath a massive mind that sees you not as an equal, but as something much smaller. They may represent the hive, the central mind, the architects behind the genetic programs humans whisper about, and whether their intentions are benevolent or malevolent, no one fully knows. But their presence lingers like a cold wind drifting through a quiet room. Then there are the tall whites, not as well known, yet deeply unsettling in their own right. Most of what we know about them comes from Charles James Hall, a U.S. Air Force weather observer stationed in the Nevada desert in the 1960s. According to Hall, the tall whites were elegant, delicate beings, 6 to 8 feet tall, with skin so white it looked almost translucent. They spoke in high, musical tones, moved with an eerie grace, and communicated with gestures and expressions as subtle as whispers. Hall claimed they had a quiet arrangement with the US military, that they used Earth as a way station, that their technology was far beyond ours, but they tolerated humans the way a patient adult tolerates a curious child, kindly but with firm boundaries. If his stories are true, then these beings lived among us, walked near our bases, observed our soldiers, and watched the desert skies, all while remaining hidden from the world. But not all encounters feel grand or cosmic. Some are small, local, almost folkloric. In 1955, in Hopkinsville, Kentucky, a family experienced something that shook them to their core. Strange creatures, small, glowing-eyed, metallic-skinned, emerged from the woods and approached their farmhouse. The family fired at them point-blank, and the beings didn't fall. They floated, they shimmered, they dodged with movements that seemed more like gravity glitches than biology. The press later called them little green men, turning a terrifying night into a joke that echoing through pop culture for decades. But the witnesses never laughed. To them, those beings were real, relentless, and far from friendly. As you breathe slowly and sink deeper into stillness, you may start sensing a pattern. These 6 species, the Greys, the Nordics, the Reptilians, the Insectoids, the tall whites, and the so-called little green men appear separately, in different eras, different countries, different contexts, yet they form a mosaic, a map. Some are scientists, some are overseers, some are infiltrators, some are passing travelers, but all of them appear connected by one mystery. Earth matters to them, maybe too much, and yet there is a 7th presence, something even more elusive, something that doesn't fit in the stars or planets' explanation, something older, something stranger, the ultraterrestrials. These beings, described by researchers like John Keel, are said to come not from space, but from other dimensions that can shift form, manipulate perception, and appear as whatever a particular culture expects to see. Angels, demons, monsters, UFOs, lights in the sky, they could be everywhere and nowhere, watching us from a reality just slightly misaligned with ours. Imagine standing between 2 mirrors, your reflection multiplied into infinite echoing images. Now imagine that one of those reflections steps out of the glass and stands beside you. That is what encountering an ultraterrestrial feels like, according to those brave enough to speak. So where does that leave us? 6 species that influence the planet, and a 7th that may exist beneath everything we think we understand. Are they working together, working against each other, or simply watching humanity like an unfolding experiment? As the night deepens, you may start to wonder why these beings so different from each other keep returning here. Is Earth a crossroads, a nursery, a battlefield, a sanctuary, or something else entirely? Maybe the answer is simpler. Maybe Earth is valuable not because of its oceans or its minerals or its atmosphere, but because of us, our minds, our emotions, our potential, our unpredictability. Or maybe we are not the main characters in this story at all, just background noise in a far larger cosmic script. Let that thought settle gently as your breath softens. Because the truth is, no matter which species you believe, or which stories resonate with you, one fact remains impossible to ignore. Humanity is being watched. Carefully, quietly, patiently, and maybe. Tonight, as you listen, one of those watchers is listening. To dot, not to scare you. not to harm you, but because you are finally paying attention. And once you start noticing the watchers in the dark starts noticing you.